my closing statement is that the future of DeSci is for the builders. So I'm really excited to see where people take it.
Hi, everyone. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a moment to give a shout out to my amazing Supercast subscribers. Your continued support means the world to me. As a Supercast member, you get exclusive access to the unfiltered, ad-free video versions of our Health Unchained interviews. Raw, real, and packed with insights. You're not just supporting the show, you're fueling the conversations at the cutting edge of healthcare and blockchain innovation. So thank you for being a vital part of this journey. If you're interested in joining, you can learn more about Supercast in the episode description.
Hi, I'm your host, Ray Dogum, and welcome to Health Unchained. On this show, I will be speaking with healthcare entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and executives who are using blockchain technologies to revolutionize healthcare. These innovators are building the distributed infrastructure and diverse communities required for a trusted, secure, and decentralized healthcare ecosystem. Enjoy the show.
What is blockchain?
Was ist Blockchain?
What is blockchain?
The doctor will see you now.
Remember, the Health Unchained podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and we are not providing any sort of legal, financial, or medical advice. Please do your own research and due diligence before making any important decisions related to these matters. And now, please enjoy episode 127 of Health Unchained.
Welcome to Health Unchained. Our guest today is Eleanor Davies, Head of DeSci at the Sei Foundation. Eleanor previously helped launch VitaDAO, the first tokenized longevity venture studio. She served as operating partner at Cerebrum DAO and was chief operating officer at Convexity Labs, which was previously known as LabDAO. With deep experience bridging Web3, biotech, and healthcare, Eleanor is here to share her insights with our community. We'll be talking about the Sei ecosystem and the $65 million Sapien Capital Fund intended for accelerating DeSci projects. So let's dive right in, Eleanor. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm excited for this convo.
Where are you calling us from today?
I'm in New York at the moment. Actually, Sei's recently opened up its office in New York. If any of the listeners are based here, then yeah, swing by, say hi. I would love to chat.
That's awesome. Maybe we can get started with talking more about your background and sharing that with the audience and the community here. Can you go through your journey a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I had probably quite an untraditional journey, as most people do when getting into DeSci. So I initially started out in healthcare, biotech, consulting at the Marwood Group that was focused on policy and regulation. During that time, I was looking into the venture side of biotech innovation, coupled with the transactions we were working on in mid to large cap. I noticed this innovation gap between the inventions coming out of the lab versus how that translates much, much further downstream. I've been extremely curious about biotech in general. I'd be reading through papers, looking to get my hands on all information, more from like a citizen scientist point of view. Really curious to understand, what is this innovation gap? Why do we still have so many diseases that are uncurable or seemingly uncurable? Why are there no treatments available yet? So much funding, so much public funding is going into R&D. There seems to be a lot of funding out there, but where does that actually go? During that time, I was kind of rabbit holing the applications of crypto, and lockdown as well and COVID definitely put a spotlight on that. Somebody forwarded an article about decentralized science to me, and I just thought, wow, this is the most compelling use case of crypto that I think I've seen. I previously taught myself to trade Bitcoin back in 2017 and been keeping a tab on that. I rabbit holed so hard that I decided to make a career out of it. I saw a real opportunity, and now we're here.
Thanks for sharing that. And, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of money out there, and a lot of it does go to funding research. But where does it end up? Even though there's so much money in research, most drugs that are researched don't get approved. In fact, they don't even go to clinical trials. So there's this huge gap, and I think DeSci is one of the movements trying to fill in that gap. It's really exciting. One thing I noticed when I was looking at your background actually is previous to DeSci and all of this, you're actually a fashion model. And I thought that was interesting.
Having been exposed at a very early age to being with people from lots of different industries, it really helps with the pattern matching side as well. I find that that's something that tends to come naturally Also, building rapport with people from different types across the industry is definitely useful. I think also just having your own voice and being very self-sufficient from a very young age definitely helps in the business context. Another reason as to why I quit is because it was incredibly boring. It was really intellectually unstimulating, but this provided more opportunity for me to really deep dive on topics that I found extremely interesting, hence the curiosity in scientific papers and having some time to develop my intellectual curiosity. As a part of the modeling lifestyle, you have, you're meeting a lot of business people who are very self-made, and it also served as a real source of inspiration as to what I want to be at a very young age, and just have the, kind of green field to meet a lot of people, see how you really carve out a niche, and also just kind of, just really look at what's interesting and refine your interests. I feel like that's become a natural pathway towards my interest in DeSci.
It's super interesting. The people skills definitely translate really well into deal making, so that makes sense. Let's talk about the Sei Foundation and just the Sei ecosystem, maybe more broadly too. Can you kind of like briefly talk about the Sei ecosystem, how it's structured, and then let's dive into the Sei Foundation's $65 million fund.
Of course. So Sei is actually quite a new chain, and how we frame it is basically it has the speed of Solana. It's actually faster than Solana at 5 gigagas with the mind share of Ethereum. So it's the first EVM parallelized blockchain. It's the fastest one out there, but it also means that you can benefit from the mind share of Ethereum because you can bridge from all the applications on the Ethereum network into Sei without needing to code switch. So programming languages are still Rust and Solidity. A thing that I really like is the fact that the people in the foundation are early team members at existing protocols, for instance, Solana, IPFS, and also a number of people in the team and also the founding team have experience and a active interest in DeSci and its applications. So it's not just DeSci. It comes more from years long conviction of having watched the space and seen it grow. So seeing applications of DeSci integrated with the Sei blockchain. I think a person who comes to mind who I really admire is Mike McCoy, who so he worked on blockchain's applications in healthcare at Accenture back in, I think, 2016, 2017. And I think he's a real source of inspiration when it comes to building out DeSci.
Shout out to Mike.
Shout out to Mike
a lot as well. So he's a fantastic contributor to this community. Great job, Mike. Keep doing what you're doing. The second question was more around the $65 million Sapien Capital Open Science Fund. Can you share a bit more about that?
Of course. So the Sapien Fund is dedicated towards building out applications in the Sei ecosystem. The preference is for projects to be Sei native. The funding is also, I see it as value-added capital. So there's access to basically somebody who has experience in DeSci, also the network. There's also the investor network to help syndicate on deals. We also have Sei Labs as well, which we bring in to enable projects to launch tokens, conduct the marketing, build product, bringing external expertise on engineering. In terms of the scope of the fund, I recently published the DeSci V2, which is my thesis behind the next generation of chain applications in DeSci. And so at a high level, we're kind of graduating away from, say, funding DAOs, R&D, tokenization, etc., into, I suppose, a more, I think, frictionless way of forming capital. So it still does have a place, but we're also looking at extended applications enabled by Sei's infrastructure, such as decentralized compute, health data management, also applications beyond that as well. The tech stack is super new, and we also have the funding available. My closing statement is that the future of DeSci is for the builders. So I'm really excited to see where people take it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I did read your article. I'll include that link in the show notes for everyone else to check out. So I appreciate you doing that. Like you mentioned, DeSci is quite broad. There's a lot of areas of DeSci. You mentioned decentralized compute and things like that. We also have like peer-to-peer publishing and fundraising, of course. Is there a specific area of DeSci that the fund is targeting? Why or why not?
In terms of specific areas, my personal interest is in enterprise and real world accessibility. I think that's the way that we make DeSci actually relevant to the real world and enable stickiness. That can look like a series of solutions. So some of it is building beyond the crypto bubble. For instance, I like what AminoChain is doing with biobanking, some existing solutions out there already doing in enterprise. Remedy comes to mind. They're currently building in the enterprise space. I like what they're doing with decentralized cross-jurisdictional patient data management and how regulatory arbitrage comes into that, whilst also maintaining the likes of HIPAA compliance. I think you can basically enable a lot more frictionless capital formation across the Ethereum ecosystem. This could be applied for early stage research. It can also be applied for, say, building biofoundries and creating companies in biotech in a decentralized way. There are a lot of applications there too.
Is there any sort of conflicts being that you're both L1s, or do you find the use cases for Sei being completely different than use cases for Ethereum?
That's a good question, actually. I see them both as complementary. If you build on Ethereum, for instance, you can also quite easily bridge over to Sei. The edge with Sei is that it's just a lot faster, and there's also
And
people
cheaper, right?
yeah, faster, cheaper, more time efficient, better, arguably better onboarding experience. It's just the fact that we're very new. So the speed of transactions on the Sei network with Giga is basically the parallel of the NASDAQ. You're having a Web 2 experience with the core components of blockchain technology. And yes, Ethereum is like a legacy chain, but I think there are also younger, more agile chains that are maybe better served for specific use cases like DeSci, for instance, which is what we're wanting to double down on.
Okay, I appreciate that. That makes sense. Do you know when you're investing in these potential DeSci startup companies or projects, what is the balance between tokens and equity that you invest in when you basically give these people resources to build?
Every project is bespoke. There's no one size fits all. We're
Gotcha.
open to tokens and also equity. It just depends on how the project is structured and what makes the most sense. Typically, we don't take the position as lead investor. We tend to follow on and provide funding in terms of milestones, plus added support from myself and the foundation, labs.
Is there a range that you're looking to invest in?
The range that we're looking at is between 50K to 2 million.
Can you share some of the exciting companies that are coming out of that now?
There are a couple of exciting companies in the pipeline that I can't speak about yet. However, health data is definitely one of them that we're very interested in looking into. I think also the concept of stablecoins within the healthcare ecosystem is also quite interesting. You need to navigate HIPAA, GDPR, etc. But I think there are certain teams out there who have a very good sense of that and who are also coming from very diverse backgrounds, which is really exciting to see. I think with the launch of the fund and also just like the ripples that this has created in DeSci has also brought out a lot of very interesting talent profiles that I'm really excited to be speaking with. I also think that gaming is quite an interesting component of, yeah, of DeSci because although there's also the biotech component, we also need to be looking towards the consumer and diversifying the ecosystem. I like some of the ideation that's going on there in terms of making the game informative but also sticky, which appeals to the crypto gaming crowd.
That's for sure. Typically speaking, if you talk to a scientist, they don't know what DeSci is. So like the gaming community and like the younger crowd is definitely more interested in this right now, but that doesn't mean in 5 years or even 2 or 3 years, it doesn't expand over to the traditional scientific community. And we're starting to see that now. There's papers in Nature talking about DeSci. So there is this exposure happening, which is super exciting. $65 million. When are you expecting to deploy all that? By when?
Yes, so we're taking a flexible approach to it and being very targeted with the types of projects we're incubating and investing in. It's not a notion of spray and pray, rather very specific. For the initial batch, we are looking at 3 to 5. And again, within the same range of check size. A lot of the fund will also be dedicated to doubling down on existing projects. It's exciting.
Talking about DeSci always makes me feel like, what about AI? What about the whole artificial intelligence component of this? Because that's something that is penetrating every single industry, essentially. Do you see a lot of these DeSci startups leveraging or also trying to use some fashion of AI in its stack? And how is that influencing your conversations?
Yeah, so I think AI is going to be used in many projects, if not all of them. I think it's fine to use that when pitching, but also it is something that's like a buzzword. I think some of the projects coming out currently are, I really like the way that they're tinkering with the utility of AI in, say, health protocol design, tokenizing, clinical trial outcomes. So from observational study outcomes, for instance. So a component of decentralized compute plus AI to simulate protein folding and also new chemical entities, and basically using this to create an NFT and then fund that. So I think maybe like a next generation of what Molecule is doing, but more on the in silico drug discovery end, could be quite interesting, and a way in order to raise capital via that. I think that for me is quite interesting, because then we're seeing like a real life use case using the decentralized component of qualified computational biologists using AI, using open source models such as AlphaFold in order to create new molecular entities. So there are a couple of projects that I'm seeing there which are tinkering with this sort of tech stack, and that's something which I find interesting. That's something which I think has a longer term use case.
Very interesting. Yeah, the idea of open AI, I guess, not the company, but the concept, open source AI, I guess, is really fascinating, because then you have, you know, inside scoop into how the models are actually working. You're not operating under this hidden veil. It's quite promising, I think, that direction. So I hope that gets picked up. I think enterprise capitalist organizations are really divided on that idea, but we'll see what happens. I understand that you're funding these DeSci companies, but in addition to money, in addition to resources like that, what else are you doing to help support them? And what are their main challenges? What's the hardest part of being successful in DeSci?
You've hit on a really important note. I'll answer the latter part of your question first. The main challenges are execution. You have two different buckets. So the first is scientists, PhDs, highly technical, maybe don't have the business experience in order to execute, and therefore teams typically need, say, a scientific person and also a business-minded person. But you also need somebody who's in Web3 who understands the tech stack and how that all fits into the equation. There are two very polar opposites, but I think that also the next generation of builders, for instance, university students who are maybe doing something on the computational side, computer science, machine learning, or bio, and then are maybe tinkering in Web3, are definitely the next frontier of talent that I'm super interested in. Yes, I'm really interested in seeing projects coming out of this. I think maybe that speaks to a generational thing. So there's the execution challenge. There's also a degree of skepticism still in the sciences about crypto. But this is also why I'm quite bullish on Sei, because we don't have any of the stigma about meme coins or rugs. And I see it as a blue sky for builders to come and build kind of legacy stigma that's inherent in crypto. So I think those are the two main challenges. The third is that it's still new, nascent, it's an unknown, and I think we also just need to get the word out there, and that feeds into the community. At the end of the day, we're all patients, and I think DeSci is a really great solution to expedite and be a supplement to the existing system. Exactly.
I'm with you. The healthcare system is super complex, and what I found, at least, is patients don't care about the actual technology necessarily. They just want to get better or healthier or cured or fixed, whatever you want to call it. and they also don't want to input their own information 50 times over to different people. So there's this data interoperability piece that is important, and the ability for your own data to be transferable to different providers seamlessly. That application is very highly valuable. How it gets done, I don't know. I think that's the challenge of the decade. So I'm looking forward to the builders coming up with solutions that make sense, that work, and that can actually become adopted, in a scalable way. So that's the challenge for everyone. Another thing that has been happening recently is federal grants have been taken away from a lot of researchers. So this presents a huge opportunity for DeSci to come in and provide some of that grant funding, or potentially have the community fund research projects. Are you seeing that sort of happening in the space?
Yes, I think obviously because this happened not so long ago, there's a bit of a lag in terms of projects building and the outcomes that we'll then see. But I see, for instance, having launch pads for specific research subsectors, also philanthropists. So I think also philanthropic funding coming in as well, either via the traditional way or via crypto. I think that crypto has this amazing network effect where I think, proof of philanthropy is interesting. I think we also need to see a bit more adoption on that side, but the community component and the transparency around movement of funds as well is also super interesting, and something that we don't actually see in the existing grants system. There are databases and archives out there, but it's super difficult to find. But I think that could be a really interesting new avenue for researchers in DeSci. I think, again, information just needs to be better disseminated, and it also needs to come from a source that's relatable, credible, and understands the stack and just can kind of dispel any existing skepticism as well. I think, on the other hand, because the new US administration is quite pro crypto, that could also work in our favor. So, although the initial hit to public spending on research has been shocking, there is the added benefit that crypto, as an alternative funding mechanism that's also maybe a little bit more self-sovereign, that's also recognized by the administration, could kind of work as a superpower in the end.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect storm for adoption. The markets are still figuring that out or absorbing all of that, but you can never predict prices. It's all about
Yeah,
the fundamentals, right?
exactly. So I would love to see launch pads for specific areas of research building on Sei. So we have the frictionless capital formation component, easy to onboard, cheap gas fees, speeds the same as the NASDAQ, and really we just kind of need to plug it in now.
Let's plug it in. Makes sense. So, question for you. This is sort of like future thinking. How do you envision the evolution of DeSci in the next 5 to 10 years? And what role will the Sei Foundation play in this transformation? So this is like an opportunity to like dream big.
Yeah. So evolution of DeSci, I see first off in biotech working as a financial layer that's just a lot more streamlined and has a lot more credibility adoption in order to fund areas of research that are overlooked. I think women's health is also a really key part of that. I like what VitaDAO is doing and other players coming up. I think also later stage biotech as well is very interesting. So, for instance, what if you could basically build a biofoundry a la crypto plus community, actually build companies with that, and then provide for the next generation of biotechs crypto on the cap table as the next de facto norm? I think that could be super powerful. Having spoken with a couple of biotech founders, the appetite to raise via crypto rails is quite high. And I think this could, again, with the new administration, become a new norm. We just need to build out the stack. I think clinical trial optimization and data harmonization is super interesting. I think that's also a space where blockchain has a role to play. I think also supply chain and audit in industries such as SynBio. That I think that's also a very interesting component.
For
And
those listening, synbio is just synthetic biology, just in case.
exactly,
And you mentioned also DAO early in that answer.
yes,
I interviewed Laura on the show, so I'll include a
nice.
note for people to check that out too. And you also mentioned Remedy earlier on.
Mhm.
Interviewed Dave and the team. Very excited about what they're working on. So
Yeah,
good stuff there.
yeah,
One thing also you mentioned clinical trial optimization. To me, this is a really important one because
Mhm.
the way we collect data from clinical trials is sort of opaque, and I think that there could be some layer of transparency there. And we're totally discounting citizen scientists, people that maybe collect data for themselves, but although it's not standardized, it's still data. It's still some information that can be leveraged in the broader scientific community. So I think there could be some connection with, like I said, connecting DeSci with those communities.
exactly.
I have a few final questions before we sort of wrap up here. So I just first of all, thank you for your time, Eleanor. It's really appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
So what are some of the favorite conferences you like to go to or events that people should be attending?
So I think for me, it's a there's the biotech and there's also the crypto. So for the biotech, I think JP Morgan Bio are probably the key conferences in order to get the most, network effect. I guess you just have to be very strategic with whom you're meeting, which events you're going to, and have a very solid plan with that. In terms
And
of the crypto,
it could be a
oh yeah,
huge, it's a huge event, so you can get lost if you don't
yeah.
have a target.
I Yeah, but I think it is also a really good way in order to disseminate the information about DeSci and also its applications in the broader industry, and get the industry executives excited because it's a two-player game, right? For crypto, I think ETH Denver was great. ETHCC I'm excited about as well. I'm also interested in a couple of the network states that are popping up this year, specifically Network School. I like the focus on dark talent, and also again bringing education in DeSci to the front of the agenda.
What was the last name? Dog talent?
Dark
Sorry.
talent, yeah,
Doc
at
talent.
Network School.
DOC talent?
No, DARK,
Oh, dark talent. Oh, okay,
dark
okay.
talent.
Um,
Yes.
Thanks for clarifying. And what is one of the most influential books you've read?
Ooh, I would say. I'm going to sound so stereotypical, but The Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged. Mm, yes, I like the focus on builders, innovation, also how the public narrative is set and how that can be, yeah, I guess also how to work with that. I think it also weaves in very well with very new industries, and I'm interested in how narratives are built. So I would say those two. Ayn Rand.
Thanks for sharing that. Part of Health Unchained, it's not just about blockchain and healthcare. It's important to keep ourselves physically active and mentally sound. And so I would like to ask you, what do you like to do to stay physically fit?
Yeah, I think also, another reason as to why I'm so bullish on DeSci is the network effect, especially having a network effect of, say, healthcare protocols, especially having, played quite a key role in VitaDAO and disseminating, more education information on like how to stay fit and healthy. For me, I'm quite active, so I'm training for half marathons at the moment. So I probably run about 50 to 60 kilometers a week, and yeah, kind of keep this ticking on the side.
Wow, you are busy. Busy woman here. That is amazing. So thanks for sharing that. When's your next race? Do you have anything scheduled yet? Or
I'm looking at doing the Brooklyn half, and also there's also the Boston one in October, November, and there's also the Royal Parks a half marathon in October in London. So I'm kind of eyeing up those at the moment.
well, best of luck to you on those races. The most I could do is a 5K or 10K, but that's really incredible.
Yeah,
Um,
it'll be sub 1 hour 20.
yeah. Uh, good luck. Eleanor, what's the best way for people to reach you and your team?
The best way to reach me is over Telegram and over X. So Telegram, I'm at Guaisha, and on X it's at Gui_Sha. In order to reach the team, you can look at the Sei Network account, and there are a lot of like tags from people who work in the foundation. Key people who are very influential in terms of BD investments, etc., are Justin, Mike, also Jack. And you can also apply for funding on the Sapien Capital website. So this is sapienfund.xyz, or you can reach out to me. I'm very approachable on X and also Telegram, and also LinkedIn.
That's awesome. I got to ask about your tag, your alias, Guaisha. So
Yes.
can you explain the origin of that? I think it's really fascinating. And I
Thank
think
you.
perfect for the perfect person.
So it's so Gui because of Gatsby's, SHA because SHA-256, the cryptographic hash, and Guaisha, Memoirs of a Guaisha. I think, yeah, very nerdy triple pun.
Super thoughtful name. I appreciate that very much.
Thank
Well,
you.
we hope today's conversation inspired you to think critically about the future of health innovation and the role we can all play in building systems that prioritize trust, transparency, and efficiency. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review to help us reach more listeners passionate about revolutionizing healthcare. Until next time, stay healthy, stay innovative, and keep your mind and ideas unchained. Eleanor, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Hey everyone, we would greatly appreciate it if you can take a moment to share your thoughts about the show by writing a review and rating the show on your podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach a wider audience and enhance the overall quality of the show. Don't forget to encourage your friends, mentors, teams, and students to tune in and subscribe as well. Thank you for your support. Check out healthunchained.org and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you enjoy podcasts. Join the premium Health Unchained Supercast community by going to healthunchained.supercast.com, which gets you access to ad-free episodes, and join the official Telegram community group for the latest updates.